So, welcome to the second edition of the Mental Health Chats with cricketers. Today, we've got England's physical disability cricketer, Will Flynn. Will, welcome to the channel, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good, all good. Busy with training and everything. Yeah, but have to be on a part of it. So, yeah, looking forward to
Pleasure, pleasure,
discussing.
pleasure to have you, mate. So, for people who don't know, Will's a physical disability cricketer. He's been playing for England for how many years now?
Oh, coming up to my 10th year next year. So yeah, too long. No, it's all good though. But
One of the
yeah, a long
veterans of
time,
England
a
camp.
long time. Absolutely, absolutely.
So, for many people, obviously, you won't know you on. Who'll be basically watching this. Explain how you got into disability cricket and what is your disability.
Yeah. So if I start with my disability, so I've had a I'm a lower limb amputee on my left leg. So I wear a prosthetic essentially from my knee below. So I was a congenital birth defect. So I was a classic case of having a deformity at birth and then having to have an early amputation anywhere between 12 to 24 months years old. So I'm kind of lucky in a sense that I've had it from birth, and I'm very fortunate to have it knee below, and it's allowed me to obviously play disability cricket, able-bodied cricket, whatever that is. But in terms of my journey through disability cricket, I started playing when I was 10 years old. So that's 14 years ago, nearly 15 years ago next week. So I got through, or I got in contact anyway through Hampshire's cricket board through Alex and Hugo Hammond's dad, Simon Hammond, who are also two England physical disability players. So I was fortunate enough that they were local. They lived about 20, 30 minutes from me, and where we were training at the Aegeus Bowl, or the Rose Bowl as it was back then, that was only 10, 15 minutes away from my house. So I was very fortunate that we had a core group of players that I could grow up with, obviously go on to rep England with and everything. So yeah, that's really how I got into disability cricket, kind of a stumble across them, because obviously their dad was head coach. So yeah, that was my journey into disability cricket. So
Nice, nice. And obviously, we say you've been playing for England now for 10 years, so you made your debut nearly 10 years ago. Um, what kind of challenges have you had through them 10 years through representing, going on tours? Obviously, you was out in Sri Lanka not long ago. What type of challenges does that bring to you as not only an England disability cricketer, but as a family man, etc., where you're going to be away from family for a certain period of time, friends? How do you combat that? And yeah,
yeah, I think on like a personal note, I'm fortunate that I don't have a partner, I don't have kids or a young family, in terms that it my support network's very much my parents and my twin brother. So dealing away and being with family for me isn't so bad, because actually I can communicate regularly with them. I can do a lot of things away from tour, away from game days. I can always FaceTime them or call them. And well, my parents have been on the last two tours where we've been to India and Sri Lanka as well. So having them there has been great. Obviously, I keep my brother updated because he just badgers me every time that something goes on with a game and everything. But yeah, I think in terms of balancing other pressures, I think there's always a pressure. It doesn't matter whether you're in the disability sides, the women's sides, the under 19s, the men's, whatever England side it is, whether you're home or away, there is a pressure to perform, and that's a challenge in itself, because I suppose being thrown in that environment 10 years ago, and I didn't make my debut for a good 2, 3 years since joining up with the squad. So I was always trying to prove myself to selectors and the coaches and the captains at the time that even though I might have been a 16, 17, 18-year-old lad, that I was good enough to come through and play. So yeah, it's I don't I don't actually fear the pressure too much, in a sense, as much as that's kind of stereotypical in terms of the mental health challenges. I think the only things you have to deal with in terms of setbacks, I suppose, is the element of selection, as I've kind of touched upon. So I know firsthand for myself that I had a hand injury in my first ever game, for England. So I was ruled out of the tour, basically in the double header that we had back in 2018 with Bangladesh and Pakistan in the first essential try series that we had in England. So that was a real disappointment for me. But then bouncing back from that, I played the whole of the 2019 series that happened, where the World Series, where India and Afghanistan were also with Bangladesh and Pakistan. And then when COVID hit, obviously we didn't really tour or anything. We just had domestic fixtures against local academies. And then I guess the real first sense where I struggled with being dropped, I suppose, was the first game of the India 2024 tour. Now that was it was a tricky set of circumstances because it was a very fresh set of coaching staff and it was a very disorganized tour. And what I mean by that in terms of the actual logistics on tour weren't too bad, but it was the build up to it in terms of the regularity of communication, more from an Indian Cricket Board's perspective rather than the ECB's perspective, because it was very last minute that we were going on tour.
Yeah,
So
I remember it was pretty much.
Yeah, it was a lot. So obviously final preparations weren't the best, or I'm not sure we were as well prepared as we were for Sri Lanka. So I think that was probably the first major setback for me, and it probably wasn't a time where I wasn't enjoying cricket as much, not enough to potentially obviously like stop it and take a break from it and obviously have stepping away for mental health reasons, but in terms of it was a real interesting place of the unknown because I'd kind of been a regular in that side for such a long period of
Yeah,
time that in terms of not having much rationale to being dropped and then coming back in for the second, third, and fourth games of the tour, it was an eye opener because obviously I didn't complain about it. I didn't say anything bad. I just got on with business as you do as professional athletes. But there's a part of me that I did feel really disappointed because I wanted to give as much as I could for that tour because obviously we're all sports athletes and we want to win a game of cricket for our country, whatever the stage and whatever the tour and points at. And obviously it was our first time touring India. So yeah, I think for me that's probably the main takeaways in terms of families. Family isn't an issue because I don't have that commitment as such yet. But I think in terms of living up to the pressure of an England cricketer, that's always going to be with you no matter how long you play for. So yeah, that's probably what I would say for that.
So obviously, just touched on there when you was out in India, first game dropped, that setback. Then the next game you got the pressure of right, I'm back in the side, need to perform, to keep my spot. How do you overcome them pressures in that situation? Because I know you as a cricketer. I've been in a dressing room with you. We have very good banter, but I also know the serious side of Will Flynn, where it's game day and he's, laser focused. So how do you differentiate from being laser focused, absolutely dialed in, to being the chilled Will Flynn we see in the bar after?
Oh, this is a tough one because I used to be, I suppose before, like I realised what my role was, I suppose in the side and being dropped, it kind of switched really because I was always very much a believer of, you've got to have throwdowns before a game. You've got to be the first one out to warm up, the last one back in the dressing room, doing all the prep that you need to be doing. So my mindset switched from very much that from India to then Sri Lanka and this tour. And I think being dropped on that first overseas tour that I went on to India, and it was England's obviously first tour that we had out there. So yeah, it was a really tough one because I think that it kind of ruined my own rituals or routines that happened because there was all of a sudden there was an emphasis on playing. You're told the night before, you get all hyped up. And usually I'm pretty very calm, composed, and I'm very much a case of I'll just do how much I need to do before a game. I won't overcomplicate things. I'll have a bit of banter with everyone. I'll go and say hello to the parents that might have been watching or just go and have a look at the pitch. Just really simple things. But in terms of, I probably put a bit too much pressure on myself in terms of trying to show others that, oh yes, I am prepared. I am ready to go before a game, even though I feel like that should be taking place 2 or 3 days prior to the tour starting and your practice facilities or whatever that be, so you can just top up on the morning of the game. So yeah, I think in terms of for that, I think that's probably what happened. And then it's a running joke now. New pan disability camps that are going on, because now I'm very much a case of I'll just go and stick my feet up. I don't really have throwdowns. I'll go and have a coffee before games, and that's not because I'm not bothered about what's going on around me. It's because I'd rather be a facilitator to teammates, because coming off the back of that tour, I played my best cricket there by just being as relaxed as possible. And I think that was the biggest learning experience from 12 months ago to obviously where we've just come off tour. So if it was me and I was giving you my typical routine, it would literally be I'll go and have a coffee, I'll go and have a lap around the ground, I'll just have a bit of banter with people. And to be honest with you, I won't take it too seriously until it gets to team time, until that's when you go through your stretches, when you go through your fielding. I've gotten very good at knowing when to switch on and off from cricket now, whereas 12 months ago, if you asked me for that, I would have been thinking and looking at highlights and thinking, what am I doing wrong? What are my little nitpicks I can take into the next game? Where now that I've matured and I've obviously, I don't want to say I'm a seasoned pro of the England side now, but I'm getting towards that stage of where it's becoming like that. So yeah, it's an interesting one for me, because there are so many pressures you can put on yourself, and I think it's actually better to just enjoy the moment you're in, but then knowing when to switch on and off at the right times. Otherwise, if you build up too much pressure on yourself and you do delve into the game too much, I think that's when you tend to perform worse. And when you're enjoying yourself and when you're being around people that you enjoy being around as well, that's also a big factor. So, yeah, I think that's probably the learning I've taken, certainly from back in 2024 and what's happened in the last 12 to 18 months. So,
Yeah,
definitely.
perfect. So for me, then, if you could think back to when you started, cricketing career, young lad, wanting to pave ways in not just the disability game, but grassroots cricket as well, to where you are now, what advice would you give your former self or a young aspiring disability cricketer or normal athlete to come through and play the game?
Oh, I would say just give yourself time. It's all part of the process. I think I was put in a position where I suppose I was subject to the pressure very early at 15, 16, joining the group. And I didn't know what the England setup was when I first joined disability cricket. So I was just playing for the fun of it up until about that age. And I didn't really know what was going on. And so then coming and being in that environment at 15 and 16, then the automatic mind shift is a case of, wow, I've got to be really serious. I've got to be on it with everything. I've got to do what I can to impress everybody. Whereas that's not always the case. So if I was going back and giving myself advice, I would say the hard yards of what you do are probably what go unnoticed, in a sense, in terms of don't put all your effort into what you can do in front of the coaches. It's the hard yards away from the pitch, whether it's in the gym, whether it is just general nutrition, whether it is just, in all seriousness, just going for a beer with your mates on the odd occasion. If that's what helps you balance life and the way that you deal with disability cricket and the pressure and everything that comes with it, I would have done that more often. But because I was very centralized to get my first cap until I was 18, I didn't necessarily have that drive and determination to take a step back away from it, in a sense, and do as much as I could. So yeah, I think I would be a lot more chilled out about it. Like, impress people at the right time. Don't just go and look for constant, satisfaction or appreciation from somebody. I think that's probably the key message, because when it's your time, it's your time. And you know, if it takes you 10 years to go and get your first international 50, and that's what happened with me, and different things like that. So you know what I mean? It hits you
Yeah,
at the right time. And I think that's something that just, it happens when it happens, and when you're ready to then, wow, this is the best mindset I'm in. These are my rituals. This is what I do before a game. You find that peak moment. And I wish I could have told my younger self that, because I don't think I'd have put myself as under much pressure as I did trying to get my first England cap. But now that I'm nearly 15, 16 down the line in terms of caps, you learn from each experience every time you're on the field. So yeah, it's one of those things that you don't realize until you are getting towards the mid-20s, because then you realize, and this is just probably just in general life as well, you don't realize what you have and what things you can appreciate, what things are out of your control. So yeah, that's probably what I'd say for that factor. So
No, it's good that. So one for me then. So outside of cricket, obviously I know the cricket. I know the Will Flynn cricketer, Will Flynn in the bar after the game or after we played in the Premier League and we've won and we've gone out and celebrated. Will Flynn, the brother, Will Flynn, the son, Will Flynn, everyday life in work. How do you cope around stigma of obviously having a prosthetic leg? Do you have, is that taboo subject of, people treat you differently? And if so, how do you combat that for people who are coming through? There might be 15, 16-year-old lads now or girls who are coming out of school and into the big bad world as such. How do you cope around that, especially within the working environment and going out for a beer with your mates?
do you know what? I think this is, I'm glad you asked this question, because I think this is like the biggest stereotypical that comes out of like school life. And I think that you're always finding your identity as you grow up, but you get a pretty good idea of what it's going to be at 15, 16. And obviously things in the real world, as you said, Big Bad Bug can change that at any time. But I just don't worry about it anymore. I just don't worry about it. I got so hung up with having a prosthetic that looked like my other leg. So there were times in the hospital where my prosthetic technician and the team around there, they used to draw um, molds effectively around my other calf on my right hand side leg, so they could effectively mold the plastic or the wood when I had a leg that I wanted to look aesthetically pleasing to try and fit in if I was in a pair of shorts or something. Um, and then I realized, in terms of in the sporting environment, just to take it away from the real life, that actually I needed to have a proper sports leg, one that was carbon fiber made, one that was fast, one that I could feel like I could turn with, keep up with all the others, and to fight for a place. And that kind of just transitioned into real life. Like I don't think about what people think of me in the gym, for example. If I'm going in the morning and it's packed at 7 o'clock in the morning when everyone's going before work, I don't really think about that. I go with my mates to the gym. We all have a bit of banter about different things, and the odd thing pops here and there, and the odd leg comment. But I'm so light-hearted about it. Like, if I get to know a group of people and they make a slightly risque joke, I don't care. I would. It's different from an outsider's point of view, because if you're an outsider and you tell me something like that, I might react a bit differently.
Yeah.
I'll be like, "Who do you think you are?" kind of thing. But I think it's one of those where in work everyone's been really accepting. Like, they were really good with allowing me time off. Obviously, the tour to Sri Lanka, the tour to India. Everyone appreciates that I play a high level of cricket. I know it's disability cricket, but it's the same thing. You're playing for England. It's a good promotional thing for me, but also the company that I'm working for, and they're very much an inclusive organisation as well. So I'm very fortunate that my team, my manager, the company I am working for can allow me to do that. But again, I don't really let it affect me in the day-to-day life. Like, no one sees me any different, and that's something that I feel very fortunate about. And certainly within a real world situation, I know it doesn't happen to everyone, and there's discrimination, there's prejudice, there's a load of different things that happen like that. But I'm very fortunate that I've grown up around family, friends, a working environment, especially like a sporting environment as well, that can appreciate. Yeah, I might be slightly different, but you can just do the same things as anybody other normal human would. So yeah, I'm very privileged, I think, to have that, and have the respect that people give me. It's really nice to have. So yeah, that's definitely a big positive in my life for that. So
No,
that is good.
and that's it's good to know that. Obviously, on the flip side, with your mates, etc., you can have that banter and at work. Especially for my point of view, when you're working in a corporate environment, it's good to know that there is that support there and there is that acceptance as well. So switch back to we're in the England camp or we're in Disability Premier League camp or you're back at your club. What support networks have you got there, teammates, etc., if you was going through a hard time? So let's say, for instance, Sri Lanka. Yeah, it's 30 odd degrees. It was an absolute sweat ball out there at times, playing every morning. Obviously, I was out there as well. You got injured towards the back end of the tournament with your, is it shoulder?
Yeah, left shoulder. It's all good now, thank
Yeah.
goodness. So, yeah, all good.
So from that, obviously, knowing that you was in the final at that stage to potentially missing that final, how, what support networks are there? Have you got a certain group of lads that you would, get round, etc.?
I think everyone. If I start with the player group as such, I think the fact we had better preparation, I would say better socials in a sense, in terms of actually we spent time together in the evenings, and because I think a lot when there were, especially when I was coming in the setup and when a few others similar age to me that were coming through the setup, obviously because there was that such big age gap and we hadn't hit that age where mentally we're a bit different compared to some of the lads obviously that might be getting into late 20s, early 30s. But I think that was as probably tight knit as I'd seen the group in Sri Lanka. And in terms of, we knew it was going to be harder than India because there were new teams. It's a different alien environment. We knew it was in more peak humid conditions and hotter conditions. So as a squad, we all agreed no matter how tough or easy or anything got in those conditions, we were always together in a support network. And I think we were so honest with each other. I knew that I I hurt my shoulder whenever it was in the set. I think it might have in fact been in the second game against Sri Lanka. I think it was towards because I then missed the India and the Pakistan game because we
Yeah, I
kind of
think it was
moved them
the
through
your third game,
in our third game. So
fourth
to
game.
have that little or fourth game, whichever one it was, but to have that kind of at the critical part of the tournament. I mean, luckily enough, we were pretty much guaranteed to go through at that point. But I could have easily just walked off the pitch and just gone, oh yeah, someone else can finish the job for the inning. But I knew what I had to do for the team, and then it was a simple conversation with the physio in terms of I want to get back out there and field, and usually I'd be one of the 5 boundary riders that would be out there, and obviously I knew it wouldn't affect my throwing arm. It's like the game's in a good position. I don't think we can risk you. Let's just see what we can do. And I had a few honest conversations with a few people to say, I don't want this to make me look like that I'm
Yeah,
not fit enough to get through this tour. It's something that just happens, anything like that. So I was always having good conversations with everybody, and nobody said anything. It was just one of those things that everybody got on with. Obviously, Jamie Goodwin took his chance, and when he came in, and obviously he's a proper seasoned tourer. He's been there from 2015 from when they won out in Bangladesh. So he was obviously waiting on the sidelines to have his go, and that's just the thing. Like, even though someone might have a little setback in the group, you always want to see whoever comes back in do well, and I think that's such a great thing with our team, and it certainly represented it my club as well in terms of I've been a first team regular there for near enough 10 years now as well. So playing in the same team as my brother, my best mate who also lives next door to me, and a few other different people because we're all in that same kind of age bracket and everything. So no matter what happens on a cricket field, we can always come off and have a beer or have a conversation about that because sometimes it is needed. Sometimes it is just a case of you do want to switch off. And the support networks that I've had from club, England, Hampshire, I owe a lot to Hampshire. I think that's the big one to me. I think that's the one that goes unnoticed is the D40 stuff that happens in the
yeah,
county competition because especially in the PD game, it doesn't happen as much in the learning difficulty or the depth, but you don't see as many cricketers come through the D40 setup. I don't think so. I think to be a part of that pool of talent that was coming through between that 2010 and 2015 period, I think goes so unnoticed because now it's produced probably 4 or 5 cricketers in the same age bracket as me that are now regular first teamers in that England PD setup. So I think that goes like duly unnoticed, and I wish I could go back and play more in that and try and give back a bit more. But just with obviously England commitments, work commitments, I can't
Yeah.
quite do that at the moment. But it's something that I definitely still feel like I could give another year to at least, just to nurture some talent through. Because at the end of the day, I don't think disability cricket will go professional probably in our kind of era, I suppose. I mean, if it does, it'll be absolutely fantastic. But knowing that you've left your shirt or your cap or whoever it is, whether that's at Hampshire, my county, or whether that is England, knowing that you've left it in a better spot than where you started for then someone else to gain an opportunity, I think that's what it's all about. So I think having those networks, as you were saying at the start, in terms of having supported me, I think now I'm getting to the point where even though I would consider myself at my peak and such, or the peak years and the prime years are in due course, that it's also time to start thinking about, well, what can I do as well, and being proactive in that to encourage people to talk about disability cricket, to get more people involved, and to try and push the game forward. So, yeah, that's what I'd probably say about that. So,
Perfect. So, two last questions then from me. So, obviously, cricket ebbs and flows of the game. Sometimes, you're chasing championships, chasing champions trophies, or promotion at club level and relegation. How do you get over a relegation, or if you've been in a cup final, for instance, and you've lost, or if you've won, then the next, obviously, is that euphoria of, yeah, we've just won. The next day and the day after, but then after that, you've got the lull of, well, I've done that
yeah,
now. What's next? And then the loss of, obviously, I know it's still a sore subject. The loss out to India in the Champions Trophy in Sri Lanka, when you took them to the sword, 2 days before, to reach the final, per se. So, how do you overcome that? And have you got any nice tips, etc., for people watching this who could take it away?
yeah. Well, I'll start with the good stuff, because I'm fortunate that we got promoted back to the Premier League and with my club side in 2023. So, and more of a joke, I probably can't tell you many tips because that was probably quite a boozy night. So, yeah, it was. No, I think, but yeah, like you say, the come downs after the few days after that, because obviously you have your big party afterwards, you celebrate, you have too many drinks, but you enjoy everybody's company. So that feeling never goes away. I don't think so. I think that's pretty easy to come down from, because you're always watching clips on it, and it's something that's then embedded in your memory forever. But in terms of, I suppose, I'm very fortunate. I've never been a part of a relegated side. I've been close to coming to relegation, so obviously there's pressures to deal with that, where you don't fall out with your teammates, but you get a little bit more on edge in the field and different things. So again, that's just having open and honest conversations. I think that's the biggest factor in mental health as general. Just talk to somebody if you're not sure about it, or you want to speak to someone about emotions. Um, and then, yeah, going to your India point, yeah, obviously we beat them in the group stage in the second game. So obviously I wanted to be out there, but obviously I wasn't because of my shoulder. So seeing it from the sidelines was a brilliant thing, because you could always run messages onto the team, and you still felt like you were part of that atmosphere. And because I had a reasonably good tournament at that point as well, it was kind of, I felt a bit more valued. Not saying that I don't usually, but in terms of there
Yeah,
was that kind of valuation about it. But that's so difficult to pick yourself up from, because anybody who says, "Oh yeah, I can forget about it in 24 hours" or things like that, it's not true. It is just absolutely not true, because to say that if anyone was put in a football World Cup final, or the Wimbledon final, or whatever it was, that a major final that it might be, and certainly for our PD series final, because this is the best group of PD players that we've ever had by an absolute mile. And it's kind of like the England football team, in terms of we have so much talent, but we still haven't won anything yet. So each time we lose in a final, it keeps getting harder and harder and harder, because we know we've done the hard yards. And I'm sure a lot of the players will also back me on this, and I'm sure if they watch this podcast, I don't ever think we hit 100% in that tournament at all. I don't think we played a genuinely complete performance. So probably to have our worst game in the final where we just didn't compete at all, and we let India get 190, and then we were 120 all out or whatever we were. The real disappointing end to the tour. So there was a lot of hurt people there that obviously had been in this position and hadn't won since 2015 or had never won a major tournament. Obviously, we said goodbye to Liam Thomas as well. So to not win that for him as well, after being a stalwart for 15 years of the PD game, that was disappointing from a team perspective as well. But you know, when life gets you down, you got to pick yourself up. It's as simple as that. And I know that's a hard message to hear for some people, and I know it's more doom and gloom about depending on what situation's going on. But nothing will ever be as bad as it seems if you talk to someone or if you live back the good experiences that you've had on that tour. And I think as long as the goods overweigh the negatives, I think that's just a good way to get over it. So I think tips that I would have is just take time away from the game for 2 to 3 weeks. Don't think about it, because that was the best thing that I ever did. I could see friends, I could see family. You know, it was a lot of commitment and weekends that were taken away before the tour and over the tour that happened. So yeah, it was really difficult. It was really difficult, but take yourself away, pick yourself back up, and then just come back fresh. Forget what's happened. Obviously, you know what's happened, but just forget what's happened, because that's the only way you move forward in life. You just got to pick yourself up and go again. And like I said, I know it's more doom and gloom for some people, but there is always light at the end of the corner. And I know it sounds so stereotypical, but it is. It's the same in every life. Like if you're struggling in work and you're trying to look for another job because it's not going how it's going, it's just one of those things that when the job finds you, it will find you. And if that's 2 weeks, if that's 6 months, if it's a year, it will find you at the right time. So yeah, that's probably some of the tips I would give, I think. So
perfect. Well, Will, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I wish you all the best this season and in the
yep,
coming
thank
years,
you.
pal. And I wish you all the best, your family all the best. And yeah, one last thing from you, pal. Anything you want to say?
I just think it's mental health's a big thing, and I know that I'm not your typical case of someone who has necessarily struggled with it a lot or done things about that. But I think that there will be a time in everybody's life where you go through a really, really low patch at sometimes, and you'll need the support of your family and friends. So I think obviously what you've done setting up this charity is brilliant, and I think that a lot of other charities that people want to start up different organizations like this, I think it's the thing to do, because you have to talk more about it, otherwise it just doesn't get noticed and pushed under the carpet. So yeah, for me, I guess it's just more of a have these conversations and enjoy the life that you're given, no matter how bad or how good it may seem, because there'll always be a day where something happens and it hits you really hard, and then it's how you pick yourself back up. But yeah, I don't really think there's anything more for me. It's just, yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, really enjoyed talking about my experiences. So
Perfect. Well, thanks, Will.
no worries.